As 2024 draws to a close, there are some houseplants in my collection that have kind of stood out as being really easy and fuss-free. And the first one is going to be the classic snake plant. And it's no secret, is it, that snake plants are just super easy, but I just love how easy care these are. They never make a fuss, and yeah, they respond really well to underwatering, especially now in winter. This one barely needs watering at all, and yeah, it put out some really lovely growth during the spring, summer too. And yeah, snake plants are just really easy to keep, and they make just a really great background plants. And yeah, I've just really enjoyed having this one this year. It hasn't had any pests or any problems whatsoever. It's just been really fuss-free. Next up we have the Aglaonema Silver Queen, and this one has just been so good this year. It hasn't had any pests. It has just put out leaf after leaf. It's grown fairly fast. I don't even think it's had a yellow leaf, and it's just remained perfect. It's not throwing a tantrum right now in the colder months, and it's even growing new leaves, even though winter started today in the UK. And yeah, it's just a really awesome plant, and it doesn't have a tantrum if you put it in a lower light area. There's definitely been less light in my plant room during winter, and this plant just hasn't skipped a beat. Its existing leaves have stayed nice and healthy. It has not got root rot. It's putting out new growth. It's just definitely one of the easiest plants I have, and I definitely highly recommend this one. It's grown so much since I bought it, and I've only had it for one growing season, so I'm pretty excited to see what this one does as we go into 2025. But if you're looking for a really easy plant that also looks stunning, Aglaonema Silver Queen is definitely going to be one for you. I could highly recommend it. Next up is the Philodendron Prince of Orange, and this one has been one of my favourites since I got it. Not only is it stunning with those gorgeous orangey leaves, but it's also been super easy. I've made sure to just give it a well-draining soil. It's still putting out leaves now, albeit a little bit slower, but this one hasn't had any pests at all. It's just grown really consistently through the growing season, and yeah, I just let it dry out. I know that if I leave it a little bit as well after it dries out, it's going to be just fine, and I've had absolutely zero drama from this one. No pests, no nothing. And yeah, it's definitely one of the easiest philodendrons out there. So I do like it when I end up getting a wish list plant that turns out to be really easy to look after and yeah, fuss free. So you can definitely just kind of forget about this one. You don't need to helicopter around it like you do on some other plants. Next is my Neon Pothos, and again, this is a plant that just loves to dry out between waterings. I never have to worry if I let it get dry for too long. Not only that, but it's also a really fast grower, as you can see. And yeah, it's just one of those plants that I can pretty much just forget about and leave it to do its thing, and it never causes any drama. It's never had pests, it's never had root rot. It's just really easy. And what I like about this one is, unlike some of the kind of standard green pothos that you can get, this one's got more of a kind of neon lime green colour to it. And yeah, it's really nice to brighten up the space, especially at the moment whilst things are fairly cold and there isn't much sun. It's nice to have a plant that brightens up the space. But yeah, this one is probably going to be touching the floor by the end of 2025, I think, because this was a fairly small plant when I got it, and it's already really huge. So yeah, this one is a great shelf plant. It looks really good trailing, and you could actually grow it up a pole too, but I personally just really love it trailing. I think it's a beautiful plant, and yeah, it's just so low maintenance, and yeah, I like low maintenance plants personally. There's no stress, and you don't have to worry if you forgot to water it. It will be just fine. It's nice to kind of be safe in the knowledge with that. Next is actually another pothos, but this is the Marble Queen pothos. I really am a big fan of this plant because you get beautiful variegation from it. But it's also super easy to care for, and yeah, just like the neon pothos, it's really good if you are an underwaterer like me. I tend to underwater my plants just because it's easier to bring a plant back from underwatering than it is from overwatering, and this is one that really responds to that kind of care really well, and you also get this beautiful variegation. That you normally expect to find in a more expensive plant, but these are really cheap and easy to get hold of, and you get that beautiful variegation. And yeah, I just think this is one of the best pothos plants that you could get. I even have two of these. I have one climbing too and one trailing, and yeah, I just think they're one of the easiest plants, and definitely one that I could recommend to not just beginners but anyone really. If you just like to have a drama-free plant life, then this one's really awesome, and of course it looks beautiful too. So yeah, they are really good plants. Just make sure to give it enough light to maintain that variegation. Next up is one of my oldest plants. I've had this one for a number of years now, and it's getting rather large, so I'm going to try and lift it up for you. It is my umbrella plant, and yeah, I had this as a tiny little plant, and for the first year it didn't really do much, but after it had come into the second year, it's just been growing really, really fast, and it's starting to kind of get a woody stem as well. So I'm thinking as we go into 2025, this one's going to get more of a tree-like form. But this is honestly one of the most low maintenance plants you could have. I've had this for a number of years now, and it's literally so easy. It's one of those plants that just likes to dry out between watering and give it bright indirect light, and that's all you really need to do with this one. Just keep up with your pest management, and yeah, this one's really adaptable too, so I've tried it in lots of different spots in my home and it never has a tantrum. It's even growing new leaves at the moment, which is amazing because it didn't used to do that, but maybe now that it's kind of more settled and more established, it's decided to also do some growing in winter, which is really fun. Next is my Raven ZZ, and you can see this one is quite large, but this one is a really good plant. It's got this really striking kind of almost black foliage, and yeah, I had this one on my wish list for a while, and it really is an awesome plant. I did repot mine this year because I wanted to put it into a more well draining soil, and I wouldn't say it's the fastest growing plant. It did grow these two stems here this year and that's it, but I don't really mind. It's quite a full plant anyway, and to be honest with you, this is probably one of my most low maintenance plants. Again, it's very adaptable. It doesn't tend to yellow off during the winter. At the moment we're in the colder months here, and some of my plants are kind of suffering a bit, but this one's not one of them. It's really happy, and yeah, I just find this one a real joy to have. I could definitely highly recommend it. I do also have the green version. That's how much I love ZZ plants, but if you are a beginner, or even if you're not a beginner, this makes a really good plant that you can kind of just neglect, because it really does like to just be left alone basically. Let it dry out completely, give it some water, and yeah, it's going to be happy. Next is another plant I've had for the longest time. This is my jade plant. I actually do have a number of these, but this one here is definitely my oldest one. I had this from a tiny little baby, and yeah, I've had it for years, so I can definitely say that this plant is very easy to keep. You just make sure that during the kind of autumn winter months you really cut back on the watering. It barely needs watering at all, and you want to make sure the soil is really bone dry. I often leave mine until I can squeeze the leaves and see that they're feeling a little bit wrinkly. That way I know I'm not going to overwater it. This one is also super easy to propagate to. I've propagated mine loads. I probably won't be propagating this one in 2025 because honestly I don't really know what to do with all the propagations. But the reason I've been propagating is because you can get the plant to branch. If you propagate, you'll get 2 branches from where you took the cuttings. So it's a good way to get this plant to kind of grow into a little kind of tree form, which is my goal with this one. You can see it's got quite woody stems now. As they mature, they do get kind of tree-like woody stems. And yeah, I think this year though, coming into 2025, I probably won't propagate it again because no one really wants jade plant cuttings anymore because they have loads of them, and yeah, they just end up going to waste because I don't need loads and loads of jade plants. I might just pinch the tops off this year because that also can make the plant branch too, and you don't end up with loads of wasted propagations. Because it is a shame to waste them. I mean, I guess you could throw them away, but I don't really like doing that. It doesn't feel that good. Next up we have my Syngonium white butterfly. This is also one of my oldest plants, and even though this one has had some pests this year, it did have thrips and it did also have spider mites. It's on this list because regardless of the pests, it's really come through them really well, and yeah, it just hasn't had all that much damage from it. It recovered so easily, and it's just back to its flourishing self. It didn't stop growing either, and yeah, it's just one of the best plants in my opinion. I got this when it was still quite a compact little plant, and I put it on a pole so that I could get it climbing, and I'm quite excited going into next year. Even though Syngoniums do tend to be quite vulnerable to pests, I think they're worth it. And yeah, this one just was really easy to get rid of them. It wasn't really a problem, and yeah, this is kind of my favourite Syngonium, I suppose, because it's a really easy care one, and also it was the first Syngonium that I ever got, so it kind of got me into Syngoniums, and the fact that I've kept it alive for a number of years, that kind of makes me feel good too. And yeah, hopefully it will continue to flourish. I don't know if I will be propagating this one next year, but we'll see. Next up is my Monstera adansonii, and as you can see, this one has grown so much this year. Not only has this one been super easy to care for and extremely low maintenance, it's also given me so many propagations, and yeah, it's basically doubled in size really. I've had to give it a pole extension, and it's been really fun propagating it too. I definitely will be propagating this one in 2025 because I'm looking to kind of make more of these. Personally, this is one of my favourite plants, and I kind of have the idea of making a kind of crazy Monstera adansonii corner. But yeah, this is one of those plants that I would highly recommend to anyone really. You don't have to be a beginner to enjoy easy plants. But this one's really simple to care for. Basically, you just give it the standard bright indirect light. It likes to dry out all the way before you water it. And the tip I would give you for this one is make sure you keep up with your fertilising, because this one does tend to need a lot of food because it grows quite fast. And I find as long as I keep up with the fertilising, it's fine. But if I kind of skip it and forget, then it can start getting yellow leaves. So definitely keep up with that fertilising, I would say. Just use a kind of liquid houseplant fertiliser. You don't have to use the branded ones that you see on YouTube. Just get whatever you can that says houseplant fertiliser and follow the instructions, and you should be fine. Next up is one of my all-time favourite plants from this year. It is my Syngonium mojito, and I had this on my wish list, and it was a real wish list plant to acquire. It did actually grow loads this year, and not only did it put out loads and loads of gorgeous new leaves, but yeah, it was also super easy to care for. I didn't actually get any pests on it for most of the year. I have had some spider mites on it, unfortunately. During these colder months, they tend to come out a bit more in winter. With the heating being on, they love the dry air. So it has had a few spider mites, but honestly, it's come through that fine, and yeah, it seems to be okay. So it seems like Syngoniums respond pretty well to pest treatments, and yeah, it wasn't really a huge deal. It was only a few anyway, and it just seems to flourish no matter what happens. It's a really cool plant, also super easy to propagate to. I did actually do some propagations of this one, but I popped them back in the pot because as a plant starts to lose its kind of lower leaves, it starts to look a bit bare over time. So I thought if I put some propagations back in the pot, then eventually over time I would get a bit more of a full. Thanks for watching, take care.